safe place of the shelter.
And how many, I mean, are people heeding those warnings? Because to a police official early in the last hour or so, he's saying the majority are, but there are some people who are still pretty unsure and trying to ride out this storm.
There are always those who try to ride out the storm, or they wait till it's too late to get out, and that we recommend that they try to stay with their local emergency shelters and try to find shelters, a safe place of last refuge at least in their community, so that they can ride out the storm safely. But we try to encourage, along with the state emergency management offices, when evacuation orders have been given, for them to move out and get to where they need to be in a safe place.
Major, at what time? I mean, for those people who are still dithering, like you were saying, they're not sure, they're looking at the hurricane path, they're wondering, is it going to hit us? Is it going to go east? Is it going west? By what point should people have made that decision? If not already, should have they made that decision? What point should they just be staying still, staying put, or seeking shelter? Is there a cut-off time, would you say?
At this point, I would say that cutoff time would be this morning, early morning, that we need to be, if they haven't left already, they need to be finding a place of safe shelter in their community, because the roads, as we've seen on the news and throughout all the reports we've had, the roads are crowded, and it's hard to get too far out of the storm's path at this point. They just need to get with their local emergency management and find a safe shelter as close to where they are so that they can get to quickly.
Major David Erickson, General Secretary of the Salvation Army's Florida Division. Major, I appreciate you taking the time and keeping us updated on the situation there, and very best of luck to your team and to yourself. And those,
and just be here for our trees. And then we also have cows and cattle on our farm, that this is their time in September and October when calves are being born. We have to be here for that. You know, these storms blow in and they make the biggest mess you could possibly imagine. And invariably trees fall on the fences. We have to fix the fences. We just have to be here, and I'm scared if we leave, we can't get back in a timely fashion.
When you hear about the fact that, you know, if you are caught in the middle of this storm and you dial 911, there may not be emergency services available to help you out. Does that scare you?
Oh, yes, it makes me very nervous. But you know what? I'm prepared for the worst, and I'm hoping for the best. I hope my house will hold up. We'll just see. It's all in the hands of God. And, you know, I'm 10 miles from the coast. Most of the evacuations are going to take place along the coastlines. Mm-hmm. We just prepare for the worst.
Reform hurricane hits Florida, and that is what the prediction is, that when in the next 24 hours it comes up the southern part of Florida here, it's going to be Category 4. These areas here in red, that is a risk of a storm surge of 9 feet. That's 3 feet taller than me, about the height of your home or 1 story of a building. all along here. Now, this is mostly the Everglades, but you get up to populated areas here, including Tampa and St. Petersburg. That's why these areas are calling for mandatory evacuations. That's why here in Tampa, U.S. Central Command, that's the headquarters of the U.S. military. That's where the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are run out of. 4,000 to 5,000 service members there. They were evacuated as well. That's a measure of the real risk. You can also see as you come down here, Miami, extremely populated areas. The storm surge expected to be 3 to 6 feet. Still an immense danger going up to West Palm Beach as well. Many of these areas under mandatory evacuation. Take a look at the Florida Keys, because some of the greatest danger there, again, the color red, that's talking about a storm surge of 9 feet or greater. There's no margin for error out there. You get a 1 foot of storm surge, you're underwater. So we're talking about immense, immense danger. And a reminder, this is for a Category 4 hurricane hitting there. All of the models predict that Irma, when it hits the southern part of Florida, it's going to be Category 4. One of the questions I should remind you, and Allison Chinchar was talking about this before, the strongest part of the storm, it's the northeast end, because the winds, it spins counterclockwise. Depending on where it comes in this band here, that'll show you whether it's the west coast or the east coast that gets hit worse, but all of them are going to get hit. It is really hard to imagine what it would be like to be standing in the middle of the ocean during Hurricane Irma, but that's basically what you're doing if you do stay down in these areas on the Keys. And CNN's Bill Weir, he's made it down to Key West today. The southern
He's getting more information. Allison, hurricane warnings, now they've been extended farther north on both coasts of Florida.
And, Wolf, that's likely going to continue. As we get closer and closer to that landfall, more and more counties are going to be added to that list. So if you think to yourself, my county's not under a watch or a warning yet, that may change. Don't plan your evacuation plans based off of that, because as we get closer to landfall, more of those counties will be added. One of the big differences we noticed in the latest advisory was the shift. It takes the track a further west, about 12 miles. That may not seem like that much, but that could end up being the difference between a landfall over Miami or a landfall over a place like Key Largo. So every little bit of a shift counts at this point. Now, winds right now 155 miles per hour. Winds have increased up to 190 miles per hour, and the forward movement west at about 12 miles per hour. It's going to be entering incredibly warm water over the next 24 hours. That is going to allow this storm to intensify back up to a Category 5 storm. We expect the winds very early Sunday. We're talking, say, around midnight to 4 a.m. to be around the 160 mile per hour range. 157, by the way, for reference, is when we make that flip back over to a Category 5. So it's expected to be a Category 5 as it goes over the Florida Keys. Then when we get back to the main peninsula here, it's likely to go as a Category 4 and then weaken very quickly after that point. Storm surge is going to be one of the big concerns with this storm. We're talking West Palm Beach down towards Key West. We could be looking at storm surge of 5 to 10 feet. Further north of that, stretching up towards Cape Canaveral, about 3 to 6 feet. Tampa down towards Sarasota, 3 to 5 feet. And then again, Naples down towards Key West. This is where we're going to have the highest amount of storm surge, expected around 8 to 12 feet. Keep in mind, a single-story building is on average 10 feet tall. So you're talking the entire first story of a ranch home, for example, underwater. Very similar to what we saw in Houston during Harvey. Here's a look at those watches and warnings that we talked about. They have now extended further north, places like Daytona Beach, Orlando, and Tampa under a hurricane watch. Sarasota, Siesta Key, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami under a hurricane warning. But these are going to shift north as we get closer to that landfall. We talk about some specific cities. Take Miami, for example. In order for them to start feeling those tropical storm force winds, that could arrive as early as 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Hurricane force winds could arrive as early as 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. Total rainfall about 6 to 8 inches possible over the coming days. Naples could be looking at tropical storm force winds to arrive around midnight tonight. And hurricane force winds, Wolf, could be expected as early as 8 p.m. tomorrow. And this is going to be a long thing for a lot of these cities, where you're going to be dealing with those intense winds and heavy rain for hours as it moves over Florida.
Looks like that whole state is in danger right now. Allison Chinchar, stand by. We're going to get back.
Well, the latest path actually takes it pretty much, we're thinking, right over Cuba. In fact, the next advisory to come out in just less than an hour from now, they may actually call the landfall over Cuba. This takes it a little bit further west than some of the original models were trending, so this may have impacts on where the track of the storm goes from here. But right now, again, it's just to the north of Cuba. It's expected to continue to the west and then make its sharp turn towards the north. Right now, winds about 155 miles per hour, but that is only 2 miles per hour below Category 5 strength, and we expect it to get up to that level in the coming hours. Here's a look at that track. Again, we expect it to be a Category 5 storm as it crosses over the Florida Keys. Then, when it gets to the main peninsula of Florida, likely to be around a Category 4 as it crosses over the southern region. We still have hurricane watches and hurricane warnings for much of this region here. Again, basically Sarasota to Fort Pierce and down is where we have the warnings, but those are likely to expand north as we get closer to that landfall time, which at this point is expected to be very early Sunday morning. Storm surge is still expected to be one of the big factors with this storm. From West Palm Beach stretching all the way down towards Key West, storm surge is expected to be about 5 to 10 feet. On the southwest side, Naples down to Key West, storm surge is 8 to 12 feet. Then just a little bit north of that, around the Fort Myers area, 5 to 8 feet. But even places far north as Tampa could be experiencing 3 to 5 feet of storm surge and rainfall. While it will be nowhere near what we had in Harvey, it's still going to be plenty high enough to trigger some flash flooding. Widespread, you're talking 4 to 6 inches of rain, but there will be several pockets that could pick up in excess of 10 inches of rain with this storm. And winds, let's face it, as a Category 5 storm, even a high-end Category 4, you're talking incredibly high sustained winds as well as wind gusts. And because the storm is so huge, you've got hurricane force winds that will extend on both sides of the coast. So, Don, it really doesn't matter whether you're on the East Coast side or the West Coast side, you're likely going to get hurricane force winds for several hours as it tracks north.
All right, we'll continue to follow Allison's.
It is